Well, good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be listening from. I'm not sure, but it's Colli from Colli Talks Transformative Conversations. And as I always say, we're going to go deep. We're going to go into a well and a wealth of information from this amazing person that I have today that is now going to be part of your life. And so today I'm speaking with this man whose life stretches across continents, genres, and callings. Sam Mukherjee is a gifted novelist, a criminal defense researcher, and seasoned storyteller whose words have shaped not only literary landscapes, but legal ones. Sam has written 4 novels, over 1,500 features and speeches, worked with a Canadian senator, and currently prepares legal briefs for criminal defense in the UK, working on over 100 cases. But what moves me most about Sam is not just his resume. It's the way he holds deep truths with a clear, steady voice. Whether through fantasy, thriller, or fact, Sam's writing reveals the tension between what is and what could be, between justice and injustice, imagination and reality, pain and possibility. We explore the transformation power of story, the ways writing can be both escape and confrontation, and how one crafts meaning across multiple lifetimes of experience. This isn't just a conversation about writing. It's about why story matters. And this man is going to bring that to life for us. So welcome, welcome, Sam. I am honored to have you with me today.
Thank you so much, Colli. That was a wonderful introduction. Thank you very much.
Well, you are so deserving of a wonderful introduction. So I'm going to start with the question, from Calcutta to Canada, right? There's been an alchemy of words, worlds, and human spirit. So it's such an honor to welcome you. And I want to begin at the beginning. And that is, can you take us, your audience, to the back of your roots? What was the young Sam dreaming of in Calcutta?
Largely food, I guess. But jokes apart, I have always been interested in stories,
Hmm.
by reading, and I was also always invited by people that were younger than me to kind of narrate stories
Okay.
without even being a proper storyteller at the time. So, and I don't know why these young people who lived in the same building complex where I lived, they assumed that I would have a story to tell them, and
Mm.
it was almost every evening that I would have to go and tell them a new story. So I think without actually planning, I was always thrust into a scenario where I had to kind of prepare a new story to tell these young children. So so yeah, I think that was what I would dream of. I would just always dream of great stories, and when I would read stories written by other people, I would wonder if those stories, had been written differently, or if the endings could have been a little different,
Hmm.
or how would I have, made changes in those stories. So those were things that I was thinking, in terms of stories when I was growing up. And
Fabulous.
Calcutta is a big city, so a lot of interesting things happening. And like if you were out and about, you would observe a lot of funny things also. If you saw fun in your day-to-day life.
Right. Well, those wonderful young people obviously had a wealth of information coming from you that, most likely led to them doing amazing things in their life. I have no doubt about that. You've lived and studied and worked across 4 continents. So, how have these varied cultural landscapes shaped your voice as a writer and thinker?
I've been asked this, often, and I realized that when I was leaving India to go
Hmm.
to Australia, you know, to be a student,
Right?
I really didn't know what to expect, because in those days, a lot of people didn't go to Australia to study, because people usually went to the States or to the UK
Okay.
from India. And, so Australia was, known to us through cricket,
Oh,
which I enjoyed. So I didn't know much about Australia. This opportunity came up, and I ended up in Australia. And I had thought that everything would be so very different from where I was. Well, I grew up in urban India, which probably was helpful because I had some exposure to the Western world.
hmm,
Uh, but what I found was that in a class of maybe 20, 25 people, I was the only Indian there, and there was not much of a difference in the way we thought and the way we kind of approach things.
right.
Um, with my fellow students. And most of them were Australian and they had a very different upbringing than mine. So, and that was a source of great surprise to me because I never felt that, I was a foreigner and, in a different country trying to learn their ways. Yes, of course I was, because I hadn't grown up watching Australian television or, being in Australia. So there was a lot of learning to do. But there were so many things that were so similar to all my classmates that I never felt that like I was in a completely different world and like a fish out of water. I never felt that way. And
Hmm,
uh, and I think that largely has to do with a lot of reading and
hmm,
reading stories from parts of the world where you know you you expose yourself to so many different experiences that when you are faced with one that is not usually your own, you're not that surprised. So,
right.
and it also happens to me when I travel and I see a place which I've read about, and it seems that, oh, it's not that alien. I knew
Hmm,
so that, it doesn't feel that, oh, wow, I've never heard of this or I've never seen anything like this before. So I think it also takes a little bit of the wonder out of the experience
okay.
if that happens. But I would have it no other way. I would
Right.
rather be than it.
Well, you and I met at the Vancouver Film School, which was like so awesome. And you were there on a full-time writing scholarship. So w- what did that mean to you? And how did, it shape your storytelling lens?
So that's happened just by chance because, I was at a friend's place and, I just saw there was this opportunity to apply for a scholarship. And I've always, enjoyed, you know, uh, appearing for contests and, applying for scholarships and all that without, any expectations. So,
Hmm.
there was a little story to write. Or, I don't recall exactly. There was some kind of a statement of purpose, which is a pretty standard thing that, colleges and universities ask for.
Right.
I wrote something which obviously I don't remember now, and got a message from them that, hey, you know what, you've been granted the scholarship, so would you like to come and join us? And I'm like, and at the time I heard that this writing department was, the study program was pretty much the same one that was being offered at the UCLA. It was just cheaper, but getting a scholarship like that obviously validates
Oh,
your,
yes.
yeah. So you feel that what you wrote in the passing without putting much thought, into it, is obviously being admired and is
Hmm.
being in a way celebrated for that. So it's a kind of a reward. So when you're rewarded, it's chances are that you would want to accept that reward. So that
Absolutely.
and it was an amazing experience in terms of learning because Vancouver Film School actually had incredible instructors, which included you. And I'm so fortunate to have been in your class. And I really learned a lot about storytelling. And because earlier I would be telling stories, but they were not as structured, and that there was a way to approach this craft.
Hmm.
Something actually began to understand and learn at the Vancouver Film School. Before
Right.
that, it was self-learned and self-taught. You
Hmm.
know, which was not always effective. I was just lucky, perhaps, to hold people's attention when I would tell a story. But understanding that there's a serious way to approach it was very important, and this opened up that possibility.
Well, it was a wonderful experience for me. You were absolutely my favorite student because you got it. You got you just got what I was, delivering in terms of the program. And it was an honor to have you as a student. And I was just thrilled every time I knew I was going to be in class and you were going to be there. So that's that's how important you are in my life. Absolutely. And our friendship has gone on for a long time since then. So I'm wondering, you've moved across genres with such ease and really from a magical realism to legal briefs. And so do you see a thread or a theme that weave through all your work, no matter the form?
I think when I used to work for an English language newspaper in India,
Hmm.
uh, there was an incident which kind of I must mention to answer your question. So I used to write features. So every day, I used to cover entertainment. It was a lot of fun. And then all of a sudden, my editor came and told me that, Sam, can you do me a favor? I need you to cover food.
Mm,
Like what? Like, can you write a food column for us for a year? I'm like, no, I know nothing about food. I just know how to eat it. So she says, well, this lady who used to do that, she's going on maternity leave. So if you can fill in, that would be really nice because it's really hard to get someone in such a short notice.
right.
So I said, yeah, I mean, okay, just to make her happy, I said, yeah, I'll try. And I came home and I told my father that this has been thrust upon me, and I was essentially cribbing about it. So and he told me that. So I got no sympathy. So all he said to me was that if you're a good writer, you should be able to write anything.
Oh.
So and that was the end of the conversation. So he was not going to listen to complaints. Uh, I
A g-
thought about it. I said, uh, it is a challenge, and I actually did it for almost a year.
wow.
And yeah, did I enjoy it? I don't know, but I thought it was reasonably okay because a lot of people would call me to write food reviews for them, and these were really good places where I was going to, and I was trying to understand food and trying to write about it. So and that was not my area of expertise at all. So I think I brought that element into experimenting with different genres because
Hmm.
novel chopped green chilies and vanilla ice cream is a coming of age story.
Hmm.
My second one was In the Name of Love, which is on human trafficking. It's a thriller on human trafficking. And my third one is a fantasy slash magical realism. So you can see how these are all so different from each other. And the
Right.
fourth one, which my latest one, which was released a couple of weeks ago, The Citizen Cynic, that's an action thriller.
Right.
So I think I've told myself that whatever story comes to me, I will write that, as opposed to being pushed into becoming an action writer or a thriller writer or a person that writes a particular type of story.
Right.
So whatever, because I'm interested in many different kinds of stories. So love stories are a little hard for me to kind of sit through because most of them don't hold my attention that much.
Hmm.
But I like to watch comedy. I like to watch action thrillers, all kinds of genres. So whatever comes to me, I will do it. As opposed to being guided completely commercially. So
Hmm.
that's what I.
Well, Perfect Tangerine was born from a very deep personal moment, the birth of your son. So, how did becoming a father open you up as a writer?
I never imagined I would be a father because,
Oh,
yeah, I mean, I never put any thought into it, and then when it happened, and ruin happened, and then I was at the hospital, and there was not much to do because we were in a big room, and
right?
uh, I was not using my cell phone at the hospital, so I really had nothing much to do. And how long can you be chatting with the nurses and the doctors? They're busy. So
Exactly.
I ended up, scribbling a few lines on a paper napkin,
Oh,
and yeah, and interestingly enough, that became the first chapter of the book
oh,
because
fabulous.
the first chapter is actually uh, Rohin's real birth, fictionalized, of course. But there was so much going on because I was in the room, the operating room. So, which was an incredible experience for me. I'd never imagined I would be, you know, in a room where birthing would take place. I never actually. So, quite the experience. So, I think I remembered all of that or most of it, and I began to make notes. And by the time I came home, a couple of days later, I had the first chapter of the book.
Oh,
I
wow.
realized
Right.
I had I had a first chapter of a book, and I'm like, if I have the first chapter, I mean, the rest of the book has to be written. I just can't leave it like that, right? So that is how that book happened. Because otherwise, I'm not the kind who would, sit down to write a fantasy or a magical realism. That's just not me at all.
Right.
So I think
Interesting.
it, yeah, very, very much so, because I discovered a completely different side of myself.
Mm-hmm.
That probably the experience of
Right.
becoming a father, kind of brought that out from me, because the story is about a very young child, and how he grows up and all that. So definitely, being a father had something to do with it. But
Oh,
I
for
can't
sure.
imagine that story if I had never entered that operating room.
Amazing. I love it. I love it. It's so great. And I know your son and I adore him. So what a fabulous way to honor him. I was just thinking, Sam, in the name of love, you dive into darker realities of human trafficking. So what called you to explore this subject? I mean, how do you hold both justice and compassion in your narratives?
So that story happened quite uniquely, because I was sitting in Calcutta on one
Mm-hmm.
of my back in India. Probably I was in Australia at the time, and I read a news item where I saw that there was a Bahraini princess who had been rescued by an American soldier.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
not exactly a rescue scenario. It was more like I wouldn't say an abduction, because he wanted to marry her, and there was opposition from the family. So I think they kind of snuck her out of the country,
Right.
and I think they appeared on Oprah as well. Many years later or something like that. But so so the idea of someone being trapped in a place and needing rescuing
Mm-hmm.
came from there, and the human trafficking angle came. This obviously had no human trafficking angle, but I brought in a little bit of a human trafficking angle from that original idea, because you see human trafficking if you keep your eyes open, if you travel.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, is visible, right? I mean, if we want to avoid looking at it, we can. Uh,
Absolutely.
if you pay attention, you will be able to see. In many parts of the world, you will be able to see it.
Right.
Not that, unfortunately, we lay people can do much about it, but because of the dangers involved. But I think that kind of gave rise to the story.
Okay.
And I also kind of brought in the subject of, forced marriages and all that. So it
Mm-hmm.
starts where, this accomplished professional Indian woman who does very well at work is very different at home, because she has to adhere to a lot of familial pressures to be married, because until and unless she's married, she's not considered to be doing well in life,
Right.
right? So the tremendous pressure on her, and she decides to take a job outside of the country without realizing that she was actually falling into the hands of traffickers. So to
Mm-hmm.
escape a forced marriage and her mother's pressures,
Right.
she being somewhere where she shouldn't be. So that's how it happened.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It like you say, it goes on more than we want to probably even, or not that we don't want to know about it, but it's just so much goes on. It's so challenging it's overwhelming because it does go on so much, right? So yeah. And now,
Many,
sorry.
an article many years ago, I had done an article on how not on sex workers, but on but they were part and parcel of another bigger article where you
Hmm.
know how they're being treated and all that, and you can just tell that human trafficking is involved. They're not doing this of their own volition.
Yeah,
So when
exactly.
you're exposed to a lot of things that you otherwise would not be able to see. So I think
Exactly.
all those kind of trickle into your book because
Hmm.
your own experiences will obviously kind of in some form or the other reflect in the way you write.
Hmm. Hmm. Well, you've definitely pivoted from, and now from novelist to legal researcher working on over 100 criminal cases. What inner shifts that had to occur for you to move into this space?
So I think the world of crime fascinated me. It
Hmm.
still does,
Hmm.
and so I think it's probably the reason why I took a lot of interest in the subject.
Right?
And when the opportunity came, I always uh, got into it.
Hmm.
And of course, the nature of the work is confidential. So obviously, I can't delve much into,
No, no, of course not. No.
details. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think what really fascinates me is, how people get caught up in situations that are not ideal.
Right.
And, and it's a very different, when you talk to someone, who is in a lot of trouble for things that you can't even imagine, it's very different. You don't get to, like if you talk to regular people, on a regular day,
Hmm.
you're not going to be exposed to this very different. So it's a completely different world out there where, you're talking to people who are embroiled in something, unpalatable. So, but I think that fascinates me, which is why I guess, all these documentaries and, crime thrillers, they're always so popular because people always have. I'm not saying it's a morbid fascination, but it's kind of something which is, you're not exposed to that every day, right? So it's
Right.
very different.
Oh, yeah. Totally, totally different, right? My goodness. I was wondering, so what has working in the legal field taught you about humanity and justice or the stories we choose to believe?
I think I approach people with compassion.
Hmm.
So I which is why, they want to keep coming back and, asking for me, wanting to work with me.
Right.
Uh, there are a lot of, very smart people out there, who obviously know the legal landscape way more than I do. My input is more of an interviewer because I've, been interviewing as a journalist. I've
Right.
interviewed thousands of people. So I can safely call myself an expert interviewer and I can, kind of distill information. And I also bring in a lot of compassion because, you know, when people are in trouble, I notice that, they're always concerned that they would be judged.
Mm,
So I judgmental, and I try to not see it's easy to sermonize, but
right.
when it comes to ourselves, we don't follow those same rules, right? So
No.
I try not to be judgmental. I listen and try to, figure out the best solutions possible for them.
Hmm.
So uh, you know, getting into, understanding their side of the story
Right.
and to present it in the manner desired. And then, obviously, the barristers come in and, the solicitor and they all work towards preparing defense. Right. So, but, you know, knowing the facts as they are,
Hmm.
is very important.
Oh, for
Or
sure.
understanding, where a person is coming from, because that makes them human also, that makes us human also. And when we kind of, work like that, it's always easier to understand people as opposed to, if you're sitting on a pedestal and, if you think you're sitting at the right side of the table,
Right.
you will never get that. You won't have them open up and talking to you because the idea is to get them the best defense, right? So everybody deserves that,
Yes.
and we do our best to kind of provide the best defense.
Well, exactly. I mean, that's part of what I taught in the film school was to walk a mile in another person's shoes, to be able to, you know, come to an understanding that my map of reality is not the other person's. And also too, to have compassion through walking a mile in someone else's shoes. And today, I don't know about you, but I just find that people are in such a hurry that it really takes, a real, like you have, deep compassion to come to a place of stillness where you can do that, where you can actually, you know, take that second position with another person. So, yeah.
I think, being a parent also kind of facilitates that to a degree.
Hmm.
Uh,
Yes.
because,
Yes.
I mean, there's so many things that, we have to kind of anesthetize ourselves against, to kind of just survive, right?
Right.
So, give an example. I lived in India for the first part of my life, and you know, there's a lot of wealth in India, and there's a lot of poverty in India as well, right? So
Hmm.
if I saw child begging on the streets when I lived there, it would impact me, but I would, I couldn't do much about it. So I would
Right.
just have to move, just keep going because if you stood and if you kept feeling sorry and sad about every person that is in any difficult situation, you would probably not survive.
No,
So as I said, we kind of anesthetize ourselves against these things, right?
exactly.
And so I realized that when I had Rohin, and he was very young, and then I had gone back to India, and when I saw children begging on the streets or struggling on the streets,
Right.
I internalized that same experience very different because I could kind of I think being a parent opens you up to a lot more. I mean, it may or may not, but in my case, it did make me, I think, not more soft, but more, I think, compassionate.
Right.
Uh,
Well,
Not just compassionate towards, even towards myself. I also
absolutely.
began to understand that, I can't be too hard on myself. I just have to be a little relaxed. So, but I think that understanding came a lot later. Initially, it was, being compassionate towards others.
Hmm.
Inadvertently, I also learned how to be more forgiving and compassionate towards myself.
Oh, wonderful. And speaking of that, I mean, that's a form of transformation. I was going to ask you, what does transformation mean to you at this stage in your life and career?
I think, I try to work on myself, rather than focus on external circumstances because I don't really have much control over, a lot of things that happen.
Hmm.
I try to, identify areas of growth and
Okay.
try to changes, like small changes and, you know, changing one's worldview and seeing challenges in a new light is something that I try to practice. And I don't know how successful I am at that, but as I said, it's easy to sermonize, but we tend to kind of not take those instructions ourselves. We are always thinking that, that person needs a change, he needs a change, she needs a change, they need a change. But, sometimes we do that, right? So
Hmm.
and anybody else. So that's what I try to do. I try to work on myself and I try to take, small steps because I realize that sometimes, we tend to overwhelm ourselves by trying to make rapid and massive changes, overnight.
Exactly.
So
Overwhelmed.
just going slow and steady, I think has worked for me. And I think, when your values, your beliefs, your passions are tested, there's a period of kind of self discovery, right? So, and you're trying to, kind of, this leads to an authentic sense of self, if you know
Hmm.
what I mean.
Oh, yeah,
So,
absolutely.
yeah. And
Absolutely.
forgiving your wrongdoers or people who think are your wrongdoers, I think that also helps. What else? I think practicing gratitude, that that has helped to a
Hmm.
degree. I try to do that. I'm not very diligent, but like when I wake up, I just don't sit down and start writing, 10 things that I'm grateful for. I tried that. I couldn't do that. So I do it in my mind, I try to
Yeah.
think of 10 things that I'm grateful for, so a lot of these little things, I think contribute towards one's transformation in the all.
Yeah. Well, it's the little things that add up to big things, right? It's baby steps, and we're all doing the best we can with what we have to do with. And when we do what you're doing, then we just continue to even do better. And that's all I think that it's important to do. And writing, 10 in the morning, it's written in your heart. So that's really, and it comes to mind. So it doesn't have to be put on paper. So,
And it's like, it's a slower result, but, surer results.
yeah,
That's how I,
absolutely. Absolutely.
yeah,
And
you know, I reward myself, which I didn't do much before. So these days I do that.
mhm,
I reward myself, and then, I keep reading and listening to things that, we need to apply in our lives. So
right.
because sometimes you know it, but you need to kind of go through it a few times to kind of, assimilate it, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And then, I was just thinking of that story about the caterpillar and the butterfly. They're sitting next to each other,
Mhm.
and the caterpillar is telling the butterfly that, "Hey, you look very different." So I says, "Yeah, because I started to take decisions." You know. So, yeah. I mean, it's a process, right? I mean, it's not that you've transformed all of a sudden, and
No.
there's that takes so long to alter. There has to be paradigm shifts in so many things for you to change completely.
Yes.
I think by and large, small and steady steps is what I go for because
Yeah,
that
well,
works. Yeah, that
it's
really
what
works.
works for you, right? And so looking back on, the many versions of yourself, I mean, the historian, the student, the novelist, the legal writer, what through line of truth or passion connects them all?
I think as I tell my son that passion fruit will sell well on Valentine's Day, but real passion will sell every day, right? So if
Mm,
you're passionate about something, you will find a way to get to it. And I always try to, kind of, I've been lucky that, I've kind of lived most of my life, listening to myself.
right.
And so, losses, if any, have really not bothered me so much because those were my decisions and, my choices. So, yeah, I think, like my passion is stories. I
Mhm.
like to tell stories, listen to stories, and I'm always talking to strangers, so much to the annoyance of family members because they get delayed with everything, right?
Yeah.
We're talking to people and we have to go somewhere and on the way I've stopped to speak with 10 people who I don't even know. So but that's my passion, that's what I do, so I never enjoy driving because that's a solo experience usually for me, right? And
Mhm.
I like trains because I talk to strangers, so not in a creepy way, I mean very
No, no.
organically
Yeah.
end up to people. And it's quite incredible, to see how many people are out there who have not had a single conversation with anyone the entire day because they're just so lonely. And
Amazing.
the people are so ready to share their lives with you, their stories with you, and of course, the gift of anonymity, right? So if
Right.
you meet somebody who doesn't know you, they're so willing to kind of share something because you're not going to see them again, or most likely you will not see them again. In my case, what happens is, people tend to ask me what I do, right? So
Okay.
which is what we usually do when we meet people, right? What do you do? That's a pretty
Mhm.
standard. So,
Exactly, right.
when I say I write, I'm a writer. So there's obviously, it transitions into, more questions and, what you write and so on. And I'm easily findable. So people look me up and, I find people I've spoken to on an airplane or maybe on the street have, they just connect.
Mhm.
But if they don't, we still come away quite enriched because we are listening to somebody else's life, their stories, not just to get a story out of it, but just to kind of understand where they come from and different challenges and how they faced those challenges. People are willing to share, and
Absolutely.
I never hesitate to open up and talk to people. And
Mhm.
there are many. This is where I have, actually been shocked by what people would come up with at the first go. Like just to give you an example, I was on the tube in London once, and there was this guy standing right next to me, and he was asking me, what are you doing here? And we ended up having a conversation. So within the first couple of minutes, he kind of tells me that he's from Bosnia, and that he was able to escape because his entire family was slaughtered.
Oh my goodness.
And yeah, I mean, you wouldn't expect that, right? So
Right.
just a person standing right next to you, but he's gone through an incredible amount of hardship.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had, similar stuff. Like I was at a backyard party somewhere in Melbourne, in Australia, and there was this guy who ended up talking to me, and he seemed a little senior at the time. And I was a little surprised because, at his age, people generally don't, migrate to a new country. And he was from South Africa. And he said that, well, I had no choice because, we had a very successful business there. And all of a sudden, and there were, some hoodlums who wanted, them to pay a certain amount of money every month to run their business. And his father said, no, no, I'm sorry, we're not going to do this. And the father was very old, but he would still come to their store and he'd sit there every day because that's the business that he had started.
Right.
And said, one fine day they just walked in and they just shot him in front of me.
Ah.
And
Oh my word.
that's something of course you don't want to hear that, but it's just so
Oh.
he went and he could just and I could feel the pain that the man that has gone through, and it was just so shocking to hear that. And
No.
so then I was thinking, and that day I think something had happened, and I had missed the train, and I think I spent $100 on a taxi, just to get to where I had to go, and uh, I was not happy about it. And I was thinking that that's the problem that I faced that day was really nothing compared to what this man has gone through, right? So
Right. Yeah. Oh wow.
yeah,
It's being intuitive enough and compassionate enough to to listen.
and people open up, people want
Mm-hmm.
to tell you. Because
Yeah.
sometimes, they don't want to kind of share these things with.
Right.
Not that
Exactly.
they're looking for, you know, compassion or anything. It's just you just need someone to listen to you. That sometimes
Well,
that's all.
somebody to light that little bit of a spark, right? Just to light it enough for them to go, oh, okay, and they could go into it. Other than that,
Mhm.
they're closed off, right? I was wondering, Sam, if someone listening right now feels stuck between their passion and practicality, between the dream and the safe choice, what would you whisper to them?
So this is something that I struggle with every day, and now I have a child, so it's a difficult one because I'll just give you an example. I have a friend who's much older to me, and he has three children, and he did extremely well in real estate. He's made a lot of money, and he said, I needed money, and I went into real estate, and I was very successful. And my children are all, accomplished. They've completed their education, and so his third son
Mm-hmm.
uh, did his PhD in cell biology or something like that. I don't recall exactly, but he's fairly accomplished, and he was teaching somewhere, and then he suddenly decided to become a flute player, a
Oh,
flutist. So, so he came and told him that, Dad, I've decided to become a flutist. So, what do you have to say to that? So, my friend, who's a much older man, he tells me that it's so difficult because I know he can live off what I have because I have a substantial amount to kind of leave for him.
right.
He doesn't want that. But the problem is, will he be able to survive as a flutist? Because he has his education and he can always fall back upon it. But that's not what he wants to do. He just studied because he, was not ready to follow his passion. And now all of a sudden he has found his passion, or he thinks he has found his passion, which is
Mm-hmm.
becoming a flutist. But can he make a living playing the flute? So as a parent, you know, I want to scream at him and tell him that, don't do that because, you will not make it. But as someone who had no experience with real estate,
Mm-hmm.
Uh, when I went into it, there were people who said that, you won't be able to make it. Uh, but, but I'm very successful. So it's a dilemma. Like, what
Yeah.
do you tell you, right? I mean, I have been lucky, but will he be lucky? Plus, being in real estate and being a flutist are two very different things. So
Right.
it's not
Exactly.
really. So I was trying to kind of tell him that, do you play the flute or well enough to be able to make a living off it, or are you devoting enough time to play the flute every day to reach a point where you will be able to, support yourself by playing the flute? If you know what I mean.
Right.
So that's
It's
exactly what I'm saying. So if you're passionate about something, and if you know that it's an uphill climb,
mm-hmm.
are you putting enough work to improve and get to a point where you will not be afraid of failure? So that is what I tell myself, because a writer's journey is difficult. It's not for everybody, and it's often solitary, and it's you work in isolation most of the time.
Right.
Even though you're working in a group, when you go back and put in your own words on that blank paper, you're still on your own. So solitary work is not for everybody. And then it's like when you're writing a book, it takes time. It takes a lot of work. I've had people asking me, "Oh, you wrote the entire book?" I'm like, "Yeah. Who else is going to finish it for me?" Right?
Yeah.
Unless you're really, really, interested in doing what you're doing, you won't be able to sustain it,
No.
right? So, but by the same token, I would say that one has to be flexible. I used to write, like, I've written advertising, I've written for public relations, I've written for a mainstream newspaper. But patterns have changed. People read differently. You have to adapt. I can't be bringing in those same writing, styles that were valid 20 years ago. I have to move with the times, and
Mm-hmm.
I have to adapt too to survive.
Absolutely. Absolutely. For sure.
Legal work kind of expects a very different kind of writing.
Yes.
So when a speech for somebody, the speech will kind of demand a very different voice. When I'm writing my novels,
Mm-hmm.
which is what the most, I will have to, focus on the way that genre is written. So I cannot bring in the same style of a pot boiler into something which is not a pot boiler, right?
Mm-hmm.
So to adapt to these demands and to be ready to adapt is
Be
very
ready.
important.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I was going to ask you, with regards to your first chapter of Perfect Tangerine and writing on the napkin right after your son was born, like if you could write one final message on a napkin today for the next generation, what would it say?
Feeling for writers
Yeah,
or for
for
aspiring
aspiring
writers?
writers. Yeah.
Very simple, just one word, right?
I love it. Right. Exactly. And
And I'll tell you, I said that, Kali, because I used to do a lot of workshops,
okay,
creative writing workshops,
right?
and people would come up to me, and they were filled with ideas. And but see, the issue is not the ideas. A lot of people have a lot of great ideas. The execution is where it all kind of sometimes falls flat, and the discipline, right? I mean, I might have a great idea, but I have to sit down and work at it, right?
Mhm.
So, and if book, it takes time, it takes effort, it takes rewrites. And I find a lot of writers or aspiring writers have no interest in doing that, because they feel that whatever they've written is so perfect that they're not willing to kind of make changes, or they're not ready to rewrites. And that's not going to help them, because inevitably there will be rewrites, or you will have to make changes, because if you want to write commercially, if you're writing for your daughter, that's fine.
Mhm.
She'll be more. But if you're writing commercially, there will be commercial demands, and to meet that, you have to change the way you think. My recent novel, which is called The Citizen Cynic, it's an action thriller. It initially started off as an action adventure for middle graders.
Right. Oh,
And
wow.
yes, and I heard it from a bunch of agents and publishers, and there was one complaint: there's not enough violence,
What?
not enough violence. And I'm like, this book is for middle graders, right? I mean, are they not exposed to a lot of violence already
Oh my
on television,
gosh.
on the internet? So I'm not able to write, a lot of gory violence for middle graders. That's not me. I can't do that. Right. So
Right.
maybe there will
Wow.
who will be, doing that job successfully. So, but I love the story. I was kind of attached to the story. I didn't want to, kind of get rid of the story. So I made alterations, and that story has now become an action thriller for new adults. So my
Oh,
point, I adapted, right? So
right.
if you know, you have to bear the commercials in mind, right? You cannot
Mhm.
say that, oh, this is my story and I'm not going to change it, right? So it took time, but I kind of made it a little different. So now it caters to a completely different audience.
Right.
And
Er,
is there
Yeah.
violence, but it's organic to the story. It's not random. So if you know what I mean, right?
Yeah.
So
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's not put in there just to just to yeah, I get it totally.
actually,
Complete.
I was very surprised, that because I suppose violence sells, and but for middle graders, I didn't want to do that.
No,
Right.
well, it's your values, it's your value
I
system.
decided to kind of stick to what I do best,
Mhm.
but was open to making the changes in the way I wanted to. Not yes, it is commercially driven now,
Mhm.
not in the manner that I didn't want to. Because if I were doing something which my heart was not in, it would not, bear the same result.
No, absolutely not. No, it's called integrity, and you are a man of integrity. So, I was gonna ask you, Sam, because we're getting close here to our final question now, and that is, w what's lighting you up creatively right now? I mean, any future projects we can keep an eye out for and an ear?
I have actually started working on my fifth novel.
Oh, wow, how exciting.
And see, my novels are usually inspired by either people or events.
Right.
So, and just the other day, I was actually speaking at a conference at the Metro Convention Center in Toronto,
Mhm.
and asked me that what inspires you. And if we have a minute, I'm going to share a little.
Yes, please. Yeah.
So years ago, when I was in Melbourne, a student, I
Mhm.
used to take the train, and there was this elderly woman who would also travel by the same train, and she would sit very close to me, so we would invariably, be in the same compartment.
Right?
And obviously knew that I was getting off at the you know at the school because a whole bunch of kids would kind of get off there, but she would go further. So in this one fine day, I just sat right next to her, and she told me that, yeah, I know you studied here. What do you study? So I told her that I was in mass communication, and I asked her, I see you every day. Where do you go? Because clearly she was not going to work. And I could just tell that she was a retiree, and she was in no hurry.
Mhm.
Oh, I go to see my husband every day. He's been on life support for 7 years.
Oh my
And
word.
so, I mean, that's not something which I wanted. I mean, wasn't even right. So I'm like, okay. And so and she tells me that. So I go there and I tell him a story every day. I make up a new story and I tell him a new story every day to
Wow.
keep him engaged. And I don't even know if he can, really understand, really comprehend anything. And so that story of that woman, I forgot her name actually. So that's a shame, but I've forgotten her name. It's been many years now. But, that got me thinking that here was this person who was not a seasoned storyteller.
Right.
She was thrust into a scenario where she had no choice but to kind of, make up a new story every day. And I was thinking of the Arabian Nights. If you remember,
Mhm.
the Princess Sherazad had to, think of a new story every day for 1,000 nights
Yeah.
to
Wow.
survive. Because if she couldn't tell a story, a brand new story, the king would have her, killed.
Yeah.
So she's trying to save herself by, telling a new story every day. Coming up with a new story every day for the king.
Mm-hmm.
And here she was trying to, come up with a new story every day, not being a seasoned storyteller, just to keep her husband alive.
Wow.
So, so that was a tremendous source of inspiration. So every time I get stuck, when I'm trying to write something and I'm like, the idea is not flowing, she always comes to my mind, and I always think of her. And I always tell myself that if she can do it, if she could do it, even I could do it. So
Oh, how beautiful. Oh, oh,
Mm.
well,
But I lost track of your question. What was your question? To which I kind of meandered a little bit.
no, that's you hit it right on. I mean, it was exactly that. It was just a matter of, with regards to what lights you up creatively now and the future projects that we can look forward to.
Yeah. So there's another novel coming up. It's a crime thriller,
Hmm.
and it is not inspired by any of the cases that I'm working on. So I'll be very
Okay.
clear about that. Yeah, but it's just something that came to my mind because, real life experiences of people. I
Right.
mean, when they start talking about, their woes, things stem from there, things come up from there.
Hmm.
And so it just, brought me to this new idea, and I've started working on it. So,
Wonderful. Well,
hopefully, I'll be able to wrap it up soon.
you will. You will. Oh, Sam, thank you so much for joining me today. And I'm so excited to share you with our audience. And
Thank you.
this will be published on Sunday morning. And I will be sending it out with promo. And, if people want to reach out to you, is that okay?
Yeah, yeah, of course, of course,
Awesome.
of course.
Awesome.
Hey,
That
I'm talking to strangers every day, at the bus stop, at the grocery store.
right.
Strangers are not strangers to me. They're just people, who are, longing to connect. And
Exactly.
before I, let you go, I have to share something, in this regard. So there was this American woman who wrote to me from Kyrgyzstan.
Okay.
Now, there was Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan and all of that. I had never really paid attention to a country called Kyrgyzstan. So she wrote from Kyrgyzstan. She picked up my book from somewhere in Kyrgyzstan,
Wow.
and she's saying that, Sam, I've read your book. I really loved it. And I'm here to build a library in my father's name. And once
Oh,
the library is complete, I would like you to come here and talk to the children here. So because I
wow.
have so why I said that was, it's all about connecting with people and, to kind of share stories. So yes, please, anyone wants to.
Absolutely. I mean, that is an incredible story in
Not many
itself.
like that. We could talk for hours, but you know how.
Absolutely. Well, we will talk again for sure, because I have enjoyed this immensely and I know our audience will too. And so I will put, on the promo piece your contact for them.
Absolutely.
So,
Thank you so much. Thank
oh,
you for
thank you
having.
so much and so much love to you and yours. And I'm just so honored and so grateful. Like I say, the moment I met you at the Vancouver Film School, I knew this was a lifelong friendship. So thank you so much. I'm so honored.
Thank you for being there. Thank you.
Lots of love, Sam. Lots of love.